what motivated Elon to get into this business and to start this company was his fear of the abuse of AI, or the lack of control of AI, not so much the abuse, but the lack of control of AI and what it may lead to by way of abuse.
Yeah, I was just going to riff there a little bit and think about, Andrej Karpathy, the way that he got connected with Tesla and Elon originally was that he worked at OpenAI while Elon was still contributing a lot of the financing there. And he has talked openly about the fact that they were, basically doing some consulting work for Tesla. And that was his in to get interested in the problems that Tesla was working on. And then Elon was able to eventually hire him into the company to work on that instead of, and I guess maybe this will tie back into your point about the talent, Larry, that even so, when Andrej is interested in the embodied self-driving problem, where does he go to work? He goes to work at Tesla, but he has never worked at Tesla to work on any of the disembodied AGI projects that he's ever been involved in, which have been several. He's always done that either at OpenAI or independently on his own. And so, you can even see that dichotomy within inside of one employee, what he is and is not willing to work on for Tesla versus outside of Tesla. But that is a great thought to, I think, for Tesla shareholders to remember that there probably will be crossover not only between products, but talent and mind share and inspiration between some of these leading AI researchers and what they're working on, as there is, an intermarriage of a more generative AI type product and in whatever way that connects to the products and services that Tesla's working on, that he'll be able to tie those in. But on that note, I did want to ask one of the other big questions that's kind of hanging out there in the air and all of this is, okay, why invest all this money and do this for, at the end of the day, something that we could probably use for free from Meta in the form of a, today Llama 3.1 405B, in the future something that is potentially more advanced than that. Why not just use what the open source community is already making available to everyone?
Firstly, it's not open source and not open. So what Llama are sharing are the weights. They're not sharing the model. So how they get there is their business. What you get is, the value of the weights. Okay, that's not bad, but that's hardly the technology. Secondly, Tesla, Elon, XAI, X will never put themselves into a dependency mode, particularly with a company like Meta or Microsoft or Apple. I mean, I talked about the value of the accruing to the walled garden of data, and that's only partly true. The generative model really is, in many respects, driven by the underlying data on which it's trained. Not 100% anymore. It used to be absolute in the truth, but not 100% anymore. So even if they used Meta's model as a start, they would want to generate their own model, extending the Meta model onto their own data, because they wouldn't want Meta to use their data. So it's, as I said at the outset, the value is not going to be in the model. The value is going to be in the stack. And the stack is going to evolve based upon the underlying data and the purpose of the stack. So to put yourself into the hands of a major vendor, into the hands of a vendor who is a major player on such an important component of your stack, I mean, if you were a software company, you would never, ever do that. I mean, never, ever do that. Because this business, and people talk nice, people talk about openness and open that, people are very nice to each other, but it is cutthroat. It is deadly, deadly war games. And people get shot through the head all the time on these very issues.
I do want to ask one question that's going to take us on a little bit of a rabbit trail, and then I'll let you guys bring us back. And the reason that I'm asking it is because it's a question that has been itching in the back of my brain that I don't feel like I have a solid answer to. And so I'd love y'all's feedback on it. If Elon started this project originally with OpenAI as a nonprofit company, and now XAI is being started as a for-profit company, why would he?
We hope a for-profit.
Well, I guess that's true. We don't particularly know. So why the shift in strategy? Is that a tacit agreement with Sam that OpenAI was a non-viable structure, an entity as it existed? And, what do you make of that kind of surface level contradiction?
That's a great question. If Elon had $50 million in the bank that everybody seems to imagine him to have, I believe he may have started this as an open source, open company. But Elon is cash strapped. X is not generating cash. X is consuming cash. X has got very heavy debts. Tesla is not throwing off huge amounts of cash at this point. All the cash it's accruing right now, it's committed to. SpaceX is still raising money, building.
He's like the most all-in investor in the history of investors. Like hundreds of billions of dollars all in future investments.
Yeah, so when you're talking about a startup that is going to consume tens of billions to the hundreds of billions of dollars. I don't know if we're going to get to 100 billion, or hundreds of billions, but certainly tens of billions. When you're talking about a startup that's consuming tens of billions of dollars, you need very, very deep pockets. You're not going to get that level of investment in a not-for-profit. Elon's original investment in OpenAI was less than $50 million. So just the scale of what is needed to achieve AGI is so massive that it's not possible to do in a non-profit vein. And XAI is already a for-profit. X is already a for-profit company, and that relationship, because X took a 25% upfront piece of XAI.
Yeah. Correct me if I'm wrong, but wasn't Sam Altman the one who approached Elon in starting an open source, like an open AI company?
I have no idea. The way Elon tells it, this is an idea that was generated from the conversations he had around AI and the dangers of AI and the lack of interest in dangers of AI with the folks from Google. And so he saw this as an anti-Google. And he said that's why he started it. Now, if Sam said he spoke to Elon first or Elon spoke to Sam first, it matters not. What motivated Elon to get into this business and to start this company was his fear of the abuse of AI, or the lack of control of AI, not so much the abuse, but the lack of control of AI and what it may lead to by way of abuse.
Yeah, that's fair. So then with that said, given that Elon already tried to acquire OpenAI through Tesla, if the emails that were leaked from OpenAI were correct on that blog post that they had, where they're like, hey, Elon proposed that Tesla's going to take ownership, or he wants total ownership because he was afraid that there wasn't going to be enough money coming in because they're not for profit, they're open and a nonprofit. And when you have a nonprofit, it's a lot harder to raise capital or to really get the necessary resources to do it, right? So to me, it's like, obviously XAI will be for profit. Very obviously XAI is going to be for profit. Hans, what the hell was your original question? I know what I wanted to go, but I forget what you asked.
Well, I mean, I guess the thing that we're driving towards ultimately is, what was the fundamental problem that Elon was trying to solve with OpenAI, and does XAI really pose a viable solution to that? Because they're, somewhat different approaches from one another.
I mean, to me, the only approach is for profit. It's obvious. Like you're not going to be able to raise enough, right or wrong. And honestly, that's where my concerns arise from, because it's becoming clearly, painfully obvious that AGI will be a for-profit business. Like it will be created within the shell of a for-profit corporation. I'm not really sure who's going to be first. My money is on Elon because Elon tends to win in the industries that he plays in. But whoever wins, that's going to be completed within a for-profit business. I think it's impossible to reach that unless compute is so like commoditized, like the LLMs are going to become, which I highly doubt that's ever going to happen. Yeah,
Farzad, it's not compute; it's energy.
Sure.
I mean, the cost of the compute compared to the amount of the value of the energy consumed over time is
That's
relatively low. So the energy costs are just gigantic, and the cost of building those energy requirements are fairly large. So I think that it's one thing to buy the $5 billion or $10 billion worth of chips. It's a whole nother thing to keep them running.
The cash flow for the energy is going to be way more important.
Yeah. And I mean, it's going to be a very, very, very long slog to get to AGI, is my judgment. I mean, I know a lot of people think, it's just across them. It's not. There's a long way to travel.
So one other quick question based on a comment that Elon was making at the X takeover about the difficulty of supplying power to these large data centers when they are operating and they're doing a training run, and you've got basically perfect synchronization across an insane number of unique chips, and they're pulling power. And so then when they're all power spiking, they're power spiking together. And then when they're all drawing down, then they're all drawing down together. And so you can have these massive fluctuations in power demand that are, almost instantaneous and on the order of hundreds of milliseconds. Apparently they have solved this problem, or at least to a degree. Do you think that the mega packs are like an incredibly important piece of whatever it is that is the energy stack that underlies that solution? Or what do you think the solution to that problem from a power standpoint looks like?
I'm not an engineer. I have some instincts about it, but they're not really that trustworthy. I haven't seen any chatter about the difficulty of maintaining power. I don't think that the instantaneous power demands are, that difficult a problem to solve in electrical engineering. My sense is that if they would have been, then we would have heard a lot more about it. I mean, batteries are very valuable to maintain frequency when you have frequency variation and fluctuation. But my understanding is that many of these data centers now have their own power supplies. They run, turbines, and then and a large reason for the running of gas turbines to supply power is to separate them from the grid, not from a technical point of view, but from a regulatory point of view. It takes years and years and years to get regulatory approval, not regulatory approval, but to get approval to connect to the grid. And that has to do with the politics of the grid ownership. Grids are owned by the by organizations formed by the electrical suppliers, the energy suppliers within a given geography. And that geography is state-run, and then it goes to a regional, and then it goes to a national basis. So there's this bureaucracy, and the bureaucracy is incredibly incestuous, and it's a real problem. In fact, there are generally 3 to 4 times some multiplier, and my memory serves me. I'm at the age where it doesn't do that well, but many, yeah, it's many times more applications are made than are finally ever built. And why? Because that 3 to 5 year cycle, it used to be 2 years, it became 3 years, now it's close to 5 years, cycle of getting interconnects approved in the grid is just too long for many projects to actually get to done or get to start. So the answer, Hans, is I don't think the problem is as much in the energy management within the environment, even despite the very taxing requirements, as it is in just getting the supply to the place where you want to build your data center.